Hello, podcast listener. Welcome to a special episode of JJ Meets World where we talk about work. And I'm not talking about working in a coal mine. I'm talking about all the jobs that Tucker and I have had over the years, plus some pretty interesting stories about clowns. This has got more clown talk than any other podcast we've ever had. I hope you guys enjoy this, and don't forget to go to patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate to the podcast.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is! He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
Weird podcast format today because there's no intro. This is the podcast. So if you usually skip the intro, don't skip this, or else you're going to end up like 5 minutes deep into the podcast. My producer, Tucker, got a new job.
I did.
And he's been going to this job.
Yeah.
Jib.
Yep.
Job. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk about jobs because we both had some pretty weird jobs over the years.
Right.
So first and foremost, this is a standard office-y kind of job you're going into.
This is my very first corporate gig with a 8 to 5 that I've ever done before. A company that acts administering benefit plans for companies. And I'm on the marketing team doing video work. And it was the first time I had to go through multiple interviews, and I'm going through training right now, so you learn every aspect of the company, which takes a couple of days. So it's definitely a new world for me.
Are you watching a lot of PowerPoint presentations?
Yes, PowerPoint has been at every training session for sure.
Have you seen any neat PowerPoint tricks that someone could take and roll into their world? Every now and then because they say the worst way to teach someone something is with PowerPoint.
Yeah.
But every now and then I see someone use PowerPoint like in a funny way, and I'm like, oh. Well,
they like to kick. It kind of depends on who designed the PowerPoint, and then they usually use some sort of theme, i.e., the Princess Bride. So every slide has like a picture of a Princess Bride character on it, and every once in a while they'll slip in clips from the movie just to illustrate a point. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the times, like the clip won't play.
Like eating someone else's lunch. Inconceivable!
Yeah, basically. So, the people who give the training, they're very honest about it. They're like, I know this is pretty boring for you today, but we're going to get through it because we're a big company and there's a lot to know. And as I finished it, I understand why they're doing it. So, sure, you can pay me to sit there and look at a PowerPoint. I can do that. Have
you had to undergo any icebreakers? Like where they're like, let's all have some icebreaker fun and get to know each other.
Every time a new training session starts, they want to do everyone's name in the room. All of us who are in the class know each other's names because we've been in every training session together. And so oftentimes there's, give us your name, your job, and your favorite food. And today, a new guy was like, hey, I need a good suggestion for what that would be. And I suggested favorite Muppet. Tell us your favorite Muppet, which is a Greg Carlson shout out. Because he
did that at his wedding.
He did that at his wedding. He used to do it in video classes and stuff. Great icebreaker. And the guy decided not to do it, which I thought was a mistake.
He's like, why would everyone want to know what their favorite mop puppet is?
By the way, do you have a favorite Muppet?
Yeah, I think my favorite Muppet is Fozzie.
Right.
Which is one of the standard, it's not a deep cut Muppet. And usually that's what people are looking for is like,
what's your knowledge?
Yeah, exactly. Like they're like, oh, you want to be Floyd or,
Because Greg loves, is it New Zealand, the guy who throws the boomerang fish?
I throw the fish and they come back to me.
I'm a Sweetums guy.
Yeah.
Sweetums is the best, especially in Follow That Bird when he's working on the used car sales lot. And he accidentally marks the price down.
That's the Muppet movie.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Isn't he in Follow That Bird?
He's not. Damn. But that's all right. But it's in the Muppet movie where he's working
for
oh God, no,
because he used car sales.
Yeah, and it's Madman Mooney's. What the hell?
Mad Eye Mooney?
No, that's from Harry Potter. What the hell is it's a famous comedian. Oh God, why can't I think of his name? He's got like the joke books that everyone buys. It's like Milton Berle.
Oh, okay.
Milton Berle plays the used car salesman, and they're gonna take a trade-in for his car for like $10, and the car was supposed to be like $995. He swats the fly. He goes, "We'll take that car for $9.95. You owe us a nickel."
So speaking of jobs, JJ, you've now been working in radio for 2 years?
3, almost 4.
Really? It's
Yeah.
been that long. So before
Because every station I've been on has been canceled. That's why it seems like it's been so short, because I've only been with the one I'm on now for a year.
for a very good chunk of time, I don't actually remember you having a full-time job. You've been running line benders. Back in the day, you worked at video rental stores and stuff like that. You've been smart with your money. You haven't been as desperate as some of us, i.e. me, have been to get back into the workforce. So how was it like for you to transition from, every day is just what I make it, to I've got a very discrete, or a very, not discrete, specific schedule
Yep.
I have to adhere to, and policies I have to abide by, and a boss I have to appease?
So my view on the working world, I think, is kind of skewed. As Tucker said, for the most part of my adult life, my job has been to run my company, the Line Benders. I've had like the part-time job that I treat like a full-time job, like when I worked at Take Two Video.
Right.
I've also had jobs where you work for 2 weeks straight without any breaks, like when I managed campgrounds out of WeFest and stuff like that. And then I guess you could say I was a touring comic for a while, for some of that time in Line Benders. Sure. So I got way more accomplished, and I made more money. That's what's important. I made way more money doing that than I ever have with a full-time job. But this is it boils down to this. Why did I end up getting a full-time job? It's not because my dream was to be on the radio. It's not because the money's great, because it's not. Anyone in media will tell you that,
right?
Unless you're on the Today Show,
right,
you're not making the big bucks. It boiled down to it was getting too expensive for me to just rely on myself as a sole proprietor business.
Yep.
So for me to be able to buy health insurance was costing me almost $500 a month.
Oof.
Right.
Oof.
And that was before a single dollar of deductible.
Right.
That is for, I think it was like a 70-30 co-insurance plan.
Right.
So I was still responsible for 30 cents of every dollar that was being spent. And so one day I kind of did some math, and I found out if I were to get into a horrific car accident and be in a coma for 2 days, come out of it, and by the time I was able to be up and running again, let's say 3 months of, like getting my life back together, the amount of money I'd end up owing would be equal to like a house.
Oof.
And so I couldn't take that burden.
No.
And here's the thing. I became the member of a chamber of commerce.
Right.
And one of the benefits of that is you could join the chamber's health plan, which was the idea that, all of us are together in this huge group, so we've got all this bargaining power. That's why your insurance, like for major companies, is less, is because you've got bargaining power.
Right.
Well, all of a sudden, the insurance company that they worked with through the chamber was like, well, now every business is considered its own entity. You can still get insurance through us, but you don't get this giant group plan and savings. Now, my life has changed a little bit now that I'm married.
Right.
Because my wife's company has baller insurance. So good that in like a week, I dropped my insurance completely at work.
Nice.
And so that's going to put some more money in my paycheck.
Right.
But hers is so much better. And so part of the reason, because I worked part-time for over a year at the radio station where I just came in and hosted the show and I did a little bit of production work and then I left.
Right.
And the reason I ended up wanting to go full-time was I needed that insurance.
Right. So you're saying it's just you don't know how much longer you're there for now, or is that what you're saying? Or
I'm saying that now that I've got sweet benefits through my wife, there's less keeping me in the same spot. I've always been somebody who imagined I would have like 50 jobs throughout my entire life.
Got it.
And I love, I'm just trying to think like off the top of my head. Here are the jobs I've had in my life.
Okay.
My first job when I was in 8th grade was a dishwasher at the Elks Club. And it was only one night a week. It was the steak fry night, which I think was Thursdays. I would go in and I'd work for 3 hours. And there was a sweet little old lady named Mary who was the one server there. And some of the guys at the Elks Club would get drunk, come in the back, and sit and talk with me while I was trying to learn my spelling test. They did not have the internet in any way, shape, or form. And
How are you studying while you're washing dishes?
well, so like they only had like 3 people had the steak dinner on most nights.
Oh.
So I could literally wait. My shift was something like 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So I could literally wait until 8:45 and then do the dishes. I ended up quitting that job when they had an actual dishwasher machine. So my job simply was to put the
To
dishes,
load the dishwasher.
yeah, and then be good. And then they're like, "Well, we're not going to rent this dishwashing machine anymore. You're going to have to do these by hand, and it's going to cost you $20 to buy these big leather gloves to keep your hands safe from the bleach." And I'm like, "Yeah, forget that nonsense." Gosh, what else? So that was my first job. I worked at a video store. I've had weird odd jobs. Like at one point, they hired me to lead tours of downtown Fargo during the street fair.
Yep.
It was a pickup truck that was dressed up to look like a train, and then you were like the caboose part of it.
Right.
And so for whatever reason, I started using this voice, and it was downtown street fair train, save your feet, beat the heat, the downtown street fair train. And my tours were just, hey, at this gas station, one time I forgot to take the hose out of my car and I pulled it out and it cost me $100 and that sucked. And it was like, have you guys ever heard of the tunnels underneath, downtown Fargo for the steam vents? So I was really making it up as I went along.
Nice.
But that was a fun job. I've been a part of several businesses over the years where I've kind of hustled and done a little of this, a little of that. I did video production for a little bit and had a huge contract for the Fargo Public Schools and something that they decided not to end up using, I think, afterwards. So what a waste of money that was. I do a lot of corporate training, some consulting. I dressed up like Santa Claus and toured through a business. Oh, boy. And but the most fun I've ever had with my jobs is when I worked for... It was originally Face Incorporated, but that was the company that owned WeFest and then oversaw 10,000 Lakes.
Right.
Boy, oh boy, did I have fun doing those jobs because it's just chaos nonstop. It is just chaos, 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 and I thrive. I thrive in horrible situations.
Huh.
So, for example, when somebody dies, that's the time to call JJ Gordon because like he can handle it and he's got this handle. He's like, he knows somebody who can handle this and you need a venue. I got it. No sweat. I loved that job. That was so much fun. And I did that for 11 years, I think.
Yeah, you were there for a while.
And I went from just someone who was checking people in to the head of camping.
Right.
So I was in charge of 30,000 campers. And I had a staff of over 1,500 people.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I that was probably the biggest I'll ever be. And then the pay was great.
Right. And you got to hang out with acts, didn't you?
Yeah, a couple of them. I got to like meet and greet with people. I got to watch Steve Martin walk his dog. All those kind of things. But what was really neat is getting to watch. I know some people think if you've never been to WeFest or if your opinion of WeFest is it's just a bunch of like drunk rednecks,
Which is my opinion of it.
right? You really, you've never been to WeFest, and so I can understand where that comes from because that's the fun thing to report on. I think for most people,
Right.
But there really is a magic to what happens down there, and to see all of these locals, or at least when I work there, all of the locals get together and transform what essentially is pasture land into one of the premier music venues in North America in like 5 days.
As far as like country music concerts go, where does it rank in the country?
Oh, I think it's pretty high up there, but in the last decade, the giant outdoor festival concert has become the cool thing to do. And I think for a long time, We Fest was something special because you didn't see it anywhere else.
Right.
And especially not in major metropolis areas. But nowadays, that's so common. You know, look at what, even in Las Vegas, they have 20 festivals a year,
Right.
and they're huge.
Right.
And you can stay at one of the millions of hotels, and you don't have to put people up. Even the NASCAR venues have gotten into concerts where you can come and camp and then see a show. So
it makes sense, too, if you're someone who has like a large venue that you can hold a lot of people and there's downtime where it's not being used.
Yep.
That makes complete sense.
Absolutely.
To be able to bring acts in there
And so where they used to be able, you know, to bring people in from all over the country, it's kind of lost its luster now.
Okay.
And I think because they're only doing one major event a year, the buying power for acts kind of changes.
Right.
Of course, you know, the dream is always like, oh, we'll get Garth Brooks out here. Well, Garth Brooks
he's on
controls
his tour.
Yeah, he controls every aspect of his show.
By the way, I think that's already the biggest tour of all time, the one that he's on right now.
I think it is.
Because he sold out within like a few minutes of like tickets going on sale, and they're doing all these big, massive places, and his crowds are going to be insane.
You know what? So you didn't go to Garth Brooks when he was in town by any chance, did you?
No.
So you want to know what I really love and respect about Garth Brooks?
His pageantry?
Yeah, first of all, he is a showman. I am not a country music fan. I can listen to it, but I don't know who all the people are in it.
Right.
But I do know Garth Brooks. I remember when he came to Fargo in like 94, I saw him at the Fargo Dome, and I thought, whoa, this is impressive. And then I got a chance to see him again, maybe like in the early 2000s. But when he announced a tour, like, oh gosh, is it 4 years ago now? I went to see him in the cities, and we got fourth row tickets.
Oh, wow.
And so being able to be that close and watch him work that crowd, he is amazing. Even though his script doesn't change from show to show with like, you guys really are the rowdiest crowd. You still feel like he's not filling you full of BS. You feel like you're having a great time. But every ticket, so Garth controls every aspect of his show. You buy tickets through his website. He's not sending you through Ticketmaster, who's going to take, $30 off of every fee. $75 for every ticket in the house. So if you're in the front row, you pay $75. If you're in the last row, you pay $75. So he makes it so that every fan has the same opportunity to see him front row as anybody else. And that, to me, blows me away. And he doesn't give radio stations just a ton of tickets right off the bat and say like, oh, here's all the front row tickets. He doesn't need to.
Not need to. He's Garth Brooks.
Exactly.
He's the biggest act in the world.
He's going to sell everything out.
He outsells Beyonce. He outsells, as far as concerts go. Yeah. It's just insane.
He's married to Trisha Yearwood.
Yeah.
And during the concert I saw, Trisha came out and sang a couple of songs. And what's amazing is he just steps out of the spotlight, but he plays backup for her on the guitar.
Nice.
And he just sits there and he smiles and he watches his wife perform. And I think to myself, damn, that guy is good. Yeah. He's so good.
He's got it made.
So, long story short, Garth, if you need someone on your tour, I'd be more than happy to help you. I know where all the best Red Robin restaurants are in the country.
I hear Garth Brooks is a huge JJ Meets World listener.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he must be.
Oh, is that why we're right? Is that why we spike in Nashville on every new episode?
Yep, pretty much.
So let's see. I worked out at the Sioux Pass Ranch, and I love that. Oh, how can I forget my time in construction?
Oh, that's right.
I spent a couple of years working as a remodeling construction laborer and then doing some commercial kitchen consulting.
Right.
So we would place stainless steel, and I know every part of a commercial kitchen now, and I know so many elementary schools and restaurants and stuff like that. I do marketing for Fargo Billiards and Gastropub, and that's been fun. I've been doing that now for over 2 years.
Nice.
Gosh, what else have I been doing to pass the time? I just have had so many weird little side jobs over the years that I've really had a blast doing most of them, and I've never said no to anything.
So do you think you're like Bert from Mary Poppins?
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
Because like every time you see him, he's got a new job.
Yeah, one day he's a chalk artist, the next day he's a one-man band, and then he's a
Chimney sweep.
chimney sweep.
3 jobs of which it's hard to find these days. So I don't know if you had Bert's resume, if that would be great.
And when he's a chalk artist, it's in the song like, today I'm a squeeber, and as you can see, a squeeber is an artist of highest degree. And I'm like, squeeber?
If anything, it's just a look at how poor the economic situation was in London at that time.
True. Although he does have a good message in that, like, you may look down on a chimney sweep, but you shouldn't, because they're the ones who get the best view of London.
Right.
And it's lucky to shake hands with you.
What year does the first Mary Poppins take place in approximately?
Oh, I think it's supposed to be I think the book is written before the turn of the century, but this takes place maybe like in the 20s.
Okay.
Because it's during women's suffrage.
Right. There you go.
In England.
So there's a chance that Bert could be sent off to war at some point.
That is dark. I didn't even think about that. Well,
I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Could happen.
I don't see why.
I just feel like that's Bert's end, the end of his story. Is that? Are you positive that Lin-Manuel is not playing Bert in the new Mary Poppins?
Positive.
Okay.
So, in fact, because that was a big discussion about it, and he plays, because he's not a chimney sweep, he's something else,
Right.
in the new movie, and he's got a different name like Jack.
So it's not Bert.
No, it's not Bert.
Or yeah, exactly.
it's not Bert.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Yeah,
I forgot what my question was for a second and thought it was something differently.
And I think the thing was like at first they were like, oh, well, we'll just have him play Bert, but nobody could play Bert as well as Dick Van Dyke.
Well, no one could play Mary Poppins as well as Julie Andrews, but that didn't stop them.
I think what they're going to do is they're going to explain that Mary Poppins is not necessarily a person, but Mary Poppins is
like
more
James Bond?
No,
Because the kids recognize her in the trailer. Like, hey, it's you.
Yeah. And I think they recognize like her essence.
Well, I think she seems to be immortal.
Right. But like it's more like a Green Lantern. Right?
The Mary Poppins core.
Yep. Yeah, Lin-Manuel Miranda plays Jack.
And she's Earth's Mary Poppins.
Yeah,
So like
for
different
right now.
quadrants of the galaxy have different Mary Poppinses.
I mean, there are weirder ways to explain my thought process, but I thought that one would really ring true for you, at least. For those of you who do not know, the Green Lantern is actually a series of people who are given magic rings to help them protect certain areas of the galaxy.
Yep. That'd be a good job. I've had...
Did you see Deadpool 2?
Yeah.
Did you like the ending
Yes,
of Deadpool 2?
I did.
Where he
loved
rights
it.
the wrongs?
Loved it. I love the, like, something like, well, big boy, or like, well, son, you're in the big leagues now, he says to himself.
So what jobs have you had over the years?
A lot. Most of them demeaning in some way until I got a little bit older. Let me see. First job ever was midweek delivery, which was
Midweek paper.
Midweek paper, yeah, which was once a week.
Let me ask you a question. That's a free paper, right?
Yep.
How do you decide who gets it?
So they assume everyone gets it unless they opt out.
Oh.
So you have a list of places to deliver it to and not deliver it to. And those are the people who've said, I don't want this. So basically, if you had an address, you were signed up for the midweek unless they told you no. At least that was it at the time. Does midweek still exist?
When I was a kid, we randomly got it. And I remember my dad just being pissed off because they would deliver it, let's say, early in the morning, and during the day it would snow.
Right.
But they wouldn't deliver it to our doorstep. They just kind of throw it up by the front of our house.
Yeah.
And it would get stuck in my dad's snowblower, and you'd hear this, and then it looked like a giant thing of confetti.
You want to know why? Because the person who did that got paid $30 a month to do it.
Ooh.
That's
How many
why.
issues? Was it once a week?
Once a week.
When was it delivered? Midweek?
Thursdays.
Midweek?
Thursdays, actually. So a little. Yeah, I guess that is technically midweek if you call it that.
If your
Between
week
Wednesday
starts on a Sunday.
right. So that was my first job. Second job, still in high school, was grocery bagging at Hornbacher's, which we talked about with Bill Lempe in the previous podcast. Did that for about 9 months and decided, I just want to be a kid without a job for right now. So I was a kid without a job. Before I was done with high school, I got into dinner theater. So I was doing dinner theater for the entertainment company in town, and I got paid for per performance.
Which at the time was a massive amount of money.
It was $40 per performance.
Whoa.
That's
and
what
nowadays you think like, ooh.
But I didn't get paid for rehearsals, and there were many more rehearsals than there were performances. And the rehearsals usually involved a lot of booze, even though I was not of legal age. But yeah, did that. And then, goodness, there was this period of time where I had a bunch of little jobs. I worked for the Downtown Community Partnership, watering the plants in downtown Fargo on Broadway every morning at 4 in the morning.
You and I are both employed by Trollwood.
Trollwood, as I was an assistant to the video production teacher for a couple years, Greg Carlson.
I was a mentor, which pretty much meant I just drove around kids.
You drove a van
Yep.
with kids in it. I did clowning. So at Paradiso, which if you're not from Fargo Moorhead is a local Mexican eatery, and on Sundays during the lunch hour, they have a clown do balloon animals. So I was that clown for a summer.
What was the name of the clown?
Sassafras. And you had to arrive in makeup and costume.
They wouldn't let you go into the bathroom?
Nope,
and
you couldn't go and change. You had to show up in makeup and costume. So I was driving around town as a clown to get there. And that was not a fun job. But I found the trick to making that job simple. The thing that makes the job hard is knowing all the different balloon animals and getting them done. So the way out of that is you have to know how to pitch ideas for balloon animals to the kids. So they go for the easiest one, which is a sword. Sword is the easy. I mean, snake technically is the easiest, but sword is the easiest one to do. And so here's the trick. You got to go, all right, here's what I can do. I can do a rabbit. I can do a bear. I can do a giraffe. I can do a wiener dog, which is the same as the giraffe, except you make a long body instead of a long neck. I can do a flower. I can do a hat. I can do a sword. And you end like that.
bear.
They always, every once in a while you get one that goes for something else, but like I'd say 90% of the time.
A sword.
And then they can hit each other with it, and the parents are happy. And so I only learned like 7. The girl I was dating at the time also did the balloon animal thing from time to time, and she learned a bunch, and kids didn't like her. So she didn't get tips or anything. I got tips all the time.
I've got a series of questions I'd like to ask pertaining to this. So did you all share the same costume? Like you had to drive the costume back to a set location, or you kept your costume?
We all kept our costume, which was like clown pants, a entertainment company polo, I believe, a wig, and a nose, and then you had to put on makeup.
Okay.
And the makeup they would provide you with, but they'd tell you how to do it. So I didn't get to pick how I put my makeup on.
You weren't a sad clown. You were like
No,
big red lips
always
coming
a
up to
happy
your cheeks.
clown. Always, and I think we were all technically sassafras. I don't think I was the only sassafras. I don't think we all got different names. Like your character in the Santaland Diaries, and every elf has a different elf name.
Yeah.
We were all just sassafras. I do like face painting as sassafras at like things too, if they needed it.
Would you and your girlfriend ever get,
I wanted
in
that
your
to
clown
happen,
outfits?
but it didn't happen.
It didn't.
Didn't happen.
Oh, that's too bad.
Right. That would have been fun, but that did not happen.
So here's another job I had. I was employed one summer for a weekend by Bonanzaville to play the town drunk.
That would be fun.
And I had never been drunk before in my life, so I was kind of going off an amalgam of what I envisioned.
Oh, you guys, my head is on fire.
Oh.
My head's on fire.
I was like, you know where to find the watering hole.
That's actually a pretty good town drunk.
It was
for
very
an old timey.
Yeah, it's very slim pickings.
Because all you need are the old westerns to see.
Ooh, there's a snake in my boot.
So it's the drunk that gets locked up at night just to sleep it off, and he gets out the next morning. And he's basically like in there every time the sheriff is there.
One of the funniest things I've ever seen in West Fargo, North Dakota, was I was driving to Bonanzaville, and I pulled up alongside a man who is dressed in full clown makeup, smoking a cigar on his way to or from an event. And I turned, and there's nobody else in my car, and I was like, oh, I wish someone was here to see this and take it in with me. And so when I finally got to Bonanzaville, the person who was in charge of my costume there was like, all right, take this. And I'm like, hey, on the way here, I saw this guy dressed as a clown in his full clown makeup. And he's like, it's going to be hot today, so make sure to drink lots of water.
So I can beat that story.
Yeah.
But it's not my story. So I got to preface, this is my friend Matt McGregor's story about his dad. But it's amazing. So his dad, from time to time, will volunteer as a clown at whatever events. I'm not quite sure what it is he would do it for, but regularly would do clowning stuff. So he could do balloon animals and juggling and face painting, all that stuff. And one day, so he was in full clown gear, makeup, and everything. I don't know where he was going. And he's driving down the interstate, and he finds that there's a van that's pulled over to the side of the road because it just hit a deer. But the deer was not dead. The deer was sort of writhing on the ground. And he pulls over because he's an outdoorsman hunter. Like, he knows how to handle situations like this. And he gets out and checks on the van, and it's like this mom, and the van is full of kids. Right? And she's like on the phone, like, I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, I got to put this animal down. Right? The only thing he had was a hunting knife. So in clown costume, he goes back to his car, gets this big hunting knife, walks over to the deer, and all these kids watch this clown slit this deer's throat.
I hope that he looked into the windshield and like made eye contact with those little kids. Oh.
Anyways, so I was a clown for a bit. I worked at Santa Photo in the mall. I can't remember if I did that for 2 years or 1 year, but I did that for a bit. At the same time as I was doing Santa Photo in the mall, I also got hired to be Santa Claus at the Moorhead Center Mall. It's a different mall across town. And I got to do that for 2 days before I got fired because I was too young to play Santa.
And all of the other Santas had pitched a fit about that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, no, there was a manager at the store who, when you looked at him, you're like, oh, he probably should have been Santa. But he wasn't, and he was apparently upset about it.
Oh, boy.
But I don't care. It was a bad job. It was not a good job because no one goes there. So maybe I saw 4 or 5 kids. The elves were girls in high school who would sit around looking on their cell phones and say that things are gay all the time. That's gay. This is gay. That's all they would do. And when kids would come through, they would ignore them. It was just a bad job.
Speaking of Moorhead Center Mall, one of my jobs was driving a parade float once in the first ever teddy bear parade. And this is what the woman who told me. She goes, all right, you're going to be driving this float. Don't mess around. Steve Stark will be walking at the front of the parade as Teddy Roosevelt. You stay behind him. And so I was driving a float with a very popular children's entertainer like in town.
Okay.
And her cast of characters,
okay,
who I found out later on, one of them might have been Scott Horvick in one of these costumes, like as a bear who plays basketball.
Oh, yeah.
What they did not tell me leading up into this, and I got this job through our mutual friend Jake.
Okay.
And for some reason, the girl he was dating at the time was like Dexter from Dexter's Lab in a costume.
Oh. I thought, for a second, she's
killer.
a serial killer.
So what they didn't tell me was I'd be driving this float, but immediately behind me would be 6 children in the back of the cab, not even like in the bed of the pickup, in the cab. And they're like, we're going to play our favorite CD. And it was this entertainer. And so I had to be blaring this entertainer's music out and the whole time. And these kids were singing and dancing, but they also were not very good at singing. And so it really drove me nuts.
Ugh. Yeah.
I also spent 5 years directing plays in rural
Rutland,
North Dakota. Yeah.
Rutland, North Dakota.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Keep going. See what other jobs you can say that remind me of my job.
Well, I worked in video rental. So I worked at Videoland and Video Action. Almost worked at Take Two at one point. I was going to apply and then work at 2 video stores at the same time and then decided not to. What else did I do before I went to MCAT? I think those were the jobs I had before Moorhead Community Access TV. And I was there for about 4 years. And I worked, I think the initial position title was production assistant, got changed to production manager, and basically I pretty much ran the daily operations of the station. Plus, I would attend every Moorhead City Council meeting and Clay County Commission meeting and direct the broadcast of those meetings on public access. So a lot of really dry, boring stuff.
Did you you did not enjoy those, it sounds like?
Not sitting through city council meetings or Clay County. They were pretty, but at the same time, you could kind of zone out after a bit. You got used to who usually would talk after each other, or, oh, this person's speaking up. That means that person's probably going to say something soon, so I could cut to their shots pretty easily. Did that, and then when I left that job because I got a job for a TV show called the Heartland Poker Tour. Oh, I forgot one before I even go to that. The Fargo Theater.
We both worked at the Fargo Theater.
I started
I
as...
took a job at the Fargo Theater, and then 2 weeks later, I got fired from my job at Take Two. So it's perfect.
That's right.
Perfect.
So I was a projectionist the first year. The second year, I became head projectionist. I think I just did 2 years there. And that was a fun job because we had so many cool people that worked there. You got to be in downtown Fargo. At that time, there weren't really any places to work downtown for people of our age.
And it was still only one screen.
It was one screen. Everything was still celluloid. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. So yeah,
I worked as a concessionist, worked my way up to projectionist, and then I was made the concessions manager, and I got to order candy, and that was a dream come true.
And then you also work with like box office?
Then they made me the box office manager.
Right.
And that was like, I had like pretty much an 8 to 5.
Right.
But it was 8 to 5, but they're like, but you like work 39 hours this week. You can never really claim enough so that you can get
it in.
Yeah.
You had to rein it in a bit.
And I remember thinking like, God, what if they offer this to me as a full-time job? What can they afford? And someone was like, I think it's below poverty level.
Well, the reason I quit the Fargo Theater was I had gotten another job writing tech reviews for a website, and it was far less work per month and the same amount of money. So I thought, well, I have all this free time while I'm doing this other thing. I should just do that. And so I was doing that at the same time as MCAT, at the same time as the Fargo Theater.
Do you remember the profile that the Fargo Forum did on you when you were the head projectionist during the film festival?
Yep.
And like, kind of like how nerve-wracking that was? That festival, you and I worked nonstop during that festival.
That was insane.
That was fun.
That was insane. And the reason was because the other two main projectionists weren't there.
Yeah.
Like the previous year, like these other guys had run it, and then they were both like out of town basically for the film festival. So I ended up running the film. Yeah, that was not, it was challenging, and I was glad I was able to do it. I proved to myself I could, but yeah, I didn't want to do that after that. Of course, projection has changed a lot since then with digital projectors. So it's not like the old days where we were stringing up 35 millimeter film.
No, there was a real, or in like building and tearing down prints.
Oh yeah, I actually thought that was kind of fun.
Oh, it was a blast until like
it.
You'd get a copy of White Christmas where someone has like back wound like an entire spool.
Yeah, you have to check it all and make sure that it's all right, and yeah, not fun. But so then I was at the Heartland Poker Tour for about 3 or 4 years as a shooter and editor, and at the end of it, I had worked my way up to managing all of the post-production. After I quit that job, I was freelance for a bit until I got contract work at Sundog, which is a technology and marketing company in town. And then I basically worked with them for about 2 years until I got back into poker TV again, when Poker Night in America got a contract with CBS Sports Network. And so they needed more people. So I got hired there as the features producer. And at the end of it, I was basically just producing any and all content that wasn't people playing poker at a table. So a lot of stuff, commercials, everything else like that. And then I did that until this last April when I thought, I can't do casinos anymore. I'm so tired of the travel and all the kind of, a lot of the really crap work that had to go with it. I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I've been freelancing all summer until I got this gig now, and which I'm still going to do some freelancing so I can keep making money. But I need to build up my savings again. Pretty much blew through my savings while I was freelancing this summer. But so I basically had kind of a nice vacation with some freelancing in the middle of it. So yeah, but now it's a job unlike any I've had before, where it's corporate. There's like 800 people that work there. There's cubicle farms everywhere, except for like where I work. I'm in a room with the marketing team, which is nice, and they're all really cool people. And I'm actually pretty excited about this job. I had to go through 2 interviews, which I'd never done before. And then, going into a corporate world like this that deals with a lot of personal data. So there's a lot of privacy concerns. So you have to there's all these different things for locking down your computer and things you can wear and say and do that I'm not used to. But it seems like a pretty cool job. I'm excited to have it.
I've only been fired from one of my jobs, and it was my job at Take Two Video. And I blame another person for my firing.
I'm trying to remember why you got fired. I can't even remember.
I got fired because a dude who was supposed to cover a shift did not show up on time.
Oh.
And I think the general manager had it in for me. And so he forced my friend, who was my manager, to fire me. But I was on a cruise. So like I got back into like port, and it was, hey, you gotta call me ASAP, and he's like, well, you're fired. And then that same kid got all of my shifts after I'd been fired, and then didn't show up for one of his shifts again, and then my manager got fired. So it was like, oh, really? So are we really looking for this? But so that's the only job I've ever been fired from. I've quit my other jobs. I've never left a job with like a quit, or like, I quit, today's the last day, you'll never see me again.
Right.
I think most places I've worked for would say that I'm a good employee, and that they would recommend me for whatever the next step of my life. Or
you ever been laid off?
No. I've always gotten out just ahead of like the big. If you think about it like this, so if the Titanic had to make a quick stop in Iceland before it like kept going to New York,
right,
I would have hopped off the Titanic in Iceland, and they would have been like, you fool, it's going to be grand. You're going to miss all the time. Like, you guys, I'm good.
Yeah.
When you played the Oregon Trail, what job did you take?
I think I would usually
Because it was what? It was doctor, carpenter,
farmer,
banker.
I don't think I was ever smart enough to pick banker.
I always played the banker.
Right, because you got all the money.
Get the most money.
Right.
You don't have life skills for like, a wagon wheel's fixed. Do you want to try and mend it?
Just buy more.
Yep. That's what I do.
Could you make money in the game? You couldn't generate income along the trail, right? So basically,
in later versions, you could sell things at the fort.
Okay.
So if you got to the fort, you could sell, like you had 3 wagon wheels or some joke like that.
Right.
You could sell that. I think you could also sell meat too.
Well, I'm wondering then, would they allow you to take even more meat then into the wagon, since you might sell it later? Because they would always tell you how much, like you'd kill a bison or a bear, and they'd be like, you can take 1/4 of this bear.
Right. They're like, you shot 2,800 pounds of meat. You can carry 5.
You just leave it out in the to spoil. I feel like there's another job I'm not thinking about that I had. So I'm going to have to rack my brain for this a little bit, but I feel like I'm missing one.
Do you think that this is going to be a job that you keep for a while?
The one I'm in now?
Yeah.
We'll see.
Isn't that always the hope, that when you get into it, that's the job you're going to keep for a while?
As long as you like it, right? Like, I want to keep a job if the job is a good job, makes me happy, and I like it. I'll give any job at least a year to try it out. So at the very least, I'll be there for a year. But my read on it is that it's a great place to work for me. Here's the thing that I know about myself, though, is that I want to be wealthy one day. I really do. I really want to be wealthy one day. The only way I think that's ever going to happen for me is either I win the lottery or I make a living creating content that I own. Those are probably the only 2 avenues open to me, and one of them is probably more likely than the other, right? So I mean, that doesn't mean that, I work this job until that. I mean, maybe I love this job and it turns out into something different down the road, but for right now, it's a perfect job for where I'm at in my life right now, and I'm definitely going to give it a good run before I decide, you know what, I'm going to leave, unless tomorrow, like, everything just goes to shit. But I can't imagine that happening.
Allow me to give you a piece of life advice from the DreamWorks animated feature, The Prince of Egypt.
Okay.
Moses has been cast away from Egypt, and he finds himself with a nomadic culture.
Right.
And he's being taught by their chief. And the chief sings a song, and it's like lie da da dee lie da, but he's got a set of lyrics that I think about all the time, which is this: a lake of gold in the desert sand is less than a cool fresh spring, but to one lost sheep a shepherd boy is greater than the richest king.
Right.
Now, how this applies to you really doesn't.
Well, I didn't say I want to be great. I said I want to be rich. So
right, but I'm just saying you could be rich in other ways other than wealth.
I see. To me, let's define, if we can, what it means to be rich or wealthy. To me, it means I have enough resources that I don't have to work for it. anymore. So even if I had just enough to make enough interest on it per year to live on, say, a $40,000 a year salary, even a $30,000 a year salary for not having to work for it, that'd be pretty sweet, right? To me, that would be wealthy. Now, obviously, I'd like to have even more money than that, but mostly it's something where I'm getting closer to the middle of my 30s now.
Yep.
And so ever since I became an adult, I've been a paycheck to paycheck, terrible with my money, no willpower, no saving skills and stuff. And now where I'm at, I'm in a much different place where I feel like now I just want to garner money and then sit on it so that life becomes easier as time goes on. So that's kind of my hope now, is that I can save, and then hopefully in my spare time apply myself towards the pursuit of making a living based off of making content that I own. That belongs to me.
Tucker, may I drop another lyric for you?
Sure.
Mo money, mo problems.
Right.
From the Notorious B.I.G.
But
here's the thing. There is an exact amount of money a person makes during the year where they figured out that's the key to happiness. And it's something like $72,000.
Right.
Is the amount of money that if you make that much money, the odds are your job is not going to be incredibly stressful. It's not going to have to, that position does not usually coincide with something where you have to make moral or ethical choices to continue to build your wealth. It's wealthy enough where you can take care of yourself and take care of your family and have stuff set away for retirement, but it's not so much so that, because there's a threshold where when you hit it, all you can think about is making more money, right?
Sure.
So you're making $100,000 a year plus. All of a sudden, you're like, I really want to be making $200,000 because these lavish vacations I'm going on, I'm at the bottom of the heap for as far as like people who are enjoying this. But if I had more money, I could enjoy this even further.
Right.
Or I'm going to own 3 homes, something like that.
Right.
And I've noticed that the wealthiest people I know are the happiest, wealthiest people that I know are the people who realize that the wealth isn't what makes them happy. It's what they can do with the wealth that makes them happy by giving to organizations without having to, slap their name across like a new sports arena so that kids can play hockey.
Right.
Or, the folks who are able to give enough money so that a museum can get a big touring thing through that, makes them a household name again.
Right.
Those are the type of things that I see people who are, they're philanthropists.
I don't think wealth would make me happy, but freedom would.
There you go.
So whatever amount gets me to that point gets me to freedom, so that I'm not trading hours of my life for that I'm not having to do this exchange just to survive.
Have you ever purchased something and thought of this product represents this many hours of work?
Yeah.
I think of that. I thought of that a lot more until like the last couple of years. I thought, oh boy, okay, so if I'm going to buy a house, I need to do a minimum of this many workshops or shows a year.
Right.
And I'm really, I'm lucky that my parents were good with money. Of course, my tragedy is I'm an orphan now, and they've left me with this, wonderful nest egg that'll help put my children through college and help us pay off our home. But I watch some people who've got money and just go like, oh, you're the worst kind of person with it.
Well, I don't think Biggie was just talking about money. I mean, I think he's talking about lifestyle. Like the lifestyle he lived with money would be totally different than mine. If I were a wealthy person tomorrow, I wouldn't be buying like a new caddy and all this new stuff and flashing it around and telling everyone that I'm super rich, because, obviously then people who aren't super rich come to you. And I think a lot of the problems he was referring to are the problems that come with getting the things that he thought he wanted, right? So let's say you want a big house. You're like, okay, what's that big house going to cost me to buy it? It's going to cost $1 million. Okay, great. I got to get to $1 million and I can buy that house. Well, that's the cost to buy the house. That's not the cost to upkeep the house, to clean it, to repair it, to make sure it's winterized and all that other stuff, property taxes and all that other stuff.
Your gardener.
Yeah, there's so many more problems that come with that. And it's not just that there's extra cost associated, but there's freedom that you're trading. That's time that you could be doing something that you want to do.
So you want
instead you're spending on your house.
So your wealth is based upon your freedom and ability to create,
right,
unencumbered by the thought of money.
Right. So having money resources that would allow me to not have to do the same kind of trading time of your day for a job, for something else. I'd rather, and also I'm sure you've heard the phrase work smarter, not harder.
Yes.
The phrase I'm trying to get into now is work harder, not longer. Which it's not my quote. I forget. It's Seth Godin, I think is his name. He was on a Tim Ferriss podcast recently. And it's the people who can focus on working harder instead of longer that are the ones that make it to where I'm talking about. So think about like Fiverr, right? Really easy to get into. Fiverr doesn't pay you more if you work harder, but it does if you work longer. Or I shouldn't use Fiverr. Fiverr's not a good example, but something that pays you hourly, you put in another hour after 12 hours. Now, that 12th hour isn't worth more than the first hour. It just happens to be another hour. So you're getting whatever X amount that is.
Versus getting money for like a project you've completed.
Right. And that you had to work really hard to do. But that doesn't necessarily mean a length of time. That means emotional anxiety. That means how much you're working without applause. That means the kind of things that you have to do are often uncomfortable. But it's typically those kind of jobs that can get you across the finish line because there's not that limit of time. So if you're making an hourly wage, there's only so much time in a day. That means there's only so much money you could make at the end of it.
When I lived in Chicago and I worked at a candy store that sold like high-end chocolates.
Yeah.
And I went in and I interviewed with the manager, and he said, "Well, where are you from?" And I said, "Oh, I'm from Fargo, North Dakota." And he goes, "Okay, well, when can you start?" And I thought, well, this place must be desperate for people because he didn't get to know me at all. And later I found out that there was a girl from Grafton who worked there, and the assistant manager was from Mankato.
So you thought North Dakota people.
Yep. So this guy told me later on, he goes, "The reason I hired you is because the work ethic that you find in that upper Midwest region is better than anything I see coming from anywhere else."
Which is funny because we have a worker shortage in this town right now.
We do.
A massive one. I actually, the other day at the McDonald's drive-thru, they had a sign that said, "We're closing this drive-thru at 10 p.m. because of worker shortage."
Yep. The South University Taco Bell had to close like on Tuesdays.
And this is a
find enough
town
people.
with like 4 or 5 different colleges in town, and they're all in session right now. Everyone's here.
I want to crack the nut on that. I don't know what it is, but to me it seems like, well, yeah, sure, we're adding students all the time.
Right.
Are students not working, or are there more jobs available to them on campus so they don't have to leave? Where are the high school students?
Right.
And I think people just expect more from a job, plus the fact that we have such a worker shortage. If you decide you don't want to work on Tuesday and your manager won't give it to you off, you say, well, screw it, I'm just not going to come in. I quit. And you can walk across the street to another restaurant or a gas station and get a job immediately.
I wonder how much of that is inherited means. So maybe kids these days have richer parents, so they're less incentivized to take wage slave jobs, McDonald's or Burger King or something.
Well, I think that's a part of it, and their parents are trying to instill in them the idea of like, I want you to concentrate on your studies,
right?
But really, they're concentrating on upping their Instagram followers,
right.
On top,
creating their brand,
yeah. On top of that, I also think the fact of the matter is that it's a workers' market right now, because it's so flooded. Most of the people who are in those jobs have never known a time when you couldn't get a job,
right?
When there was nothing to be had in this town. I want to wrap this particular work podcast up with this, which is, have you ever been asked a question in an interview and thought to yourself, that is the dumbest question I've ever heard, but later on it really made sense? You're like, oh, no wonder they asked me that.
I can't think of a single question that I thought was a stupid question.
I'll give you an example. when I was working as an events coordinator, one of the questions was, okay, so let's say there's an event at 4 p.m. Tell me what you're doing with your day until 4 p.m. And I was like, I get up and I take a shower, and then I double check my checklist for the event, and then I get here, probably early, like 2:30, so that I have plenty of time to, in case anything goes wrong, stuff like that. And then I'd wait for the client to arrive. So the guy goes, okay, so you didn't mention eating at all. So now in the middle of the event, you're starving. You didn't mention making sure that your cell phone is charged, so now your cell phone's dead.
Well, they wanted a granular look.
Well, he said, but here's the thing. You didn't tell me some things that are pretty important to your day.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, to him, he could have cared less if I walked him through what I thought he wanted to hear.
Right.
He wanted to hear okay, what does this person, do they think outside the box?
Mm-hmm.
When they're walking through their day, what is it? So I think granular would have been and then I take a right on 13th Avenue and I plot out, but little things like that. And I think to myself,
I guess as if I were in the interviewee's position, I'd be like, oh, I didn't realize you wanted me to tell you the things that every human does every single day to stay alive.
But here's the thing.
Oh, and then I shit at 2 p.m.
But do they though? Have you ever left the house and your cell phone's down to 12% and you're like, well, fuck, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, but I mean, that's not every single day, right?
Right. But what if it was that day?
Well, I mean, how is he supposed to protect? I think it's actually a pretty stupid question.
I loved that question. And another thing too is you didn't mention eating at all during the day. Are you stopping and having fast food on the way? Are you having a healthy breakfast?
Yeah, you didn't tell me if you changed in the morning. Are you going out naked or are you wearing clothing? As the interviewee, I would have been like, well, I think you would have assumed that I wear clothing. I didn't know that's what you were asking.
But that's the
about.
question he's at. But okay, so how about this? You never asked to clarify the question. Would you like it more in depth? He asked you a question tell me what you do before this. And to me, that I think speaks volumes. And while everyone probably answers the question in a very similar way, if you find that one person who answers in that other way,
that'll tell you everything you need to know about that person.
I think somebody was telling me it's the interview style that Disney does. Disney's not looking for you to tell them what you think that they should hear. Disney's looking for what makes you unique and an individual.
Got it.
And so, if you had said I'd stop and get a cup of coffee somewhere. So this person says, okay, this is a dude who doesn't make his own coffee. He goes out, he gets his cup of coffee. He's used to the routine. He he's not afraid to interact with other people in a coffee environment.
His coffee skills are great.
You've got different ways to, I think, quantify,
to assess.
Those different things. And I've always found that question to be very, very intriguing. Side note, I did not get that job.
You didn't answer correctly.
I didn't answer correctly.
You did not.
And then I did ask, is there a right or wrong afterwards? He goes, no.
A question I think that everyone, though, should be prepared to answer, and I was asked it at this job, and it was the first time I've ever been asked it at a job interview, was tell us one of your biggest failures. And so I had a couple I could tell them tell to them, but that's one that you really got to be prepared for, because that's where I think they're really judging not necessarily the failure, but how you talk about it. And
my greatest failure is when I graduated from college with my PhD. I really should have taken more time to smell the roses.
My greatest failure is I care too much.
I also think when people can be honest about a failure, if you go back and listen to our interview with Eric Hatch, he's a guy who has embraced failure over the years, and he sees it as a form of strength.
Right. Oh, yeah, it is. Absolutely. I mean, every good lesson I've learned has been through failure, and not just failure, miserable failure.
And let's wrap it up with, by the way, failure is something we haven't had in JJ Meets World. We've continued to put out 2 episodes a week, every single week.
This is episode 70.
This is episode 70. 70, everybody. And if you are so inclined, you can go to patreon.com. Now, I recently talked to one of our regular listeners who said, I don't know if I'm spelling Patreon right. So patreon.com// the slash towards the com / I thought / goes towards the next word.
No, it goes in the direction that the sentence is going.
Oh, so it goes up
Yeah,
from
so
the
it's-
com
yeah,
up?
Yeah, so forward
That's
slash.
not a backslash?
No, forward slashes are in URLs.
Oh. Well, whichever slash it is, JJ at, and then JJ Meets World,
You
all
can just
one
say
word
slash. I
together.
mean, they'll figure it out.
Will they?
I'm
I'm spelling Patreon
if they
for
put
them
in the
right here.
backslash and it just goes nowhere, then they'll figure it out.
See, I thought that the backslash would have been the one that, like,
Forward slash.
interesting.
Yep.
Well, there you go. You
There you
learn
go.
something
Learn
new
something
every
new.
do. You can go there and you can support the JJ Meets World podcast. We certainly appreciate every dollar that comes in on that. It helps us defer the cost of our studio.
You guys are awesome. We really appreciate it.
It's fantastic stuff. And sooner rather than later, we're going to be putting out some stuff for our Patreon listeners.
Hell yeah.
As a special thank you. But beyond that, I think, Tucker, congratulations on the new job.
Thanks, man.
Don't let it hurt your responsibilities here.
It hasn't so far. We'll see what it does.
All right, make me some soup. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com and you can find direct contact info for JJ. One of my jobs was for a guy who couldn't see. He wasn't blind, but he just had trouble seeing, and he kept calling me his eye dog, and I just did not care for that so much. And so one day I said, if you call me your eye dog one more time, I'm leaving. And so I went and I slammed the door, and he kept calling for me over and over, but then he's like, I guess you must have left. I was in his house the whole time.